looking into your present life, and I see you attempting to take some notes. You've written some notes. I can barely make out your handwriting. Your handwriting is hard to read. I can't read it, and neither can you. Your students are taking notes. They're writing furiously and quickly, but they're having difficulty. They want to see the big picture. They want to remember what they've written down, but it's difficult. Things may be changing soon. I see something wonderful in the future for you.
Hi, and welcome to Maps, Mindscapes, and more. In this exciting program, you'll learn about how to make mind maps as well as mindscapes. You'll learn some of the specific classroom applications for them, and you'll learn how to use them to be able to have students not only learn more, but to be able to enjoy their learning and really come up with some surprising amounts of creativity and enjoyment in the learning process. And what's best is you'll learn it from a real expert, Nancy Margulies. I've been in the field of mind mapping for over 20 years and have used it with students of all ages, but I've never found someone who puts it all together, makes it look so fun, and really helps all of us learn it so quickly as Nancy. So get ready, fasten your seatbelts. We're going to have a great time, so let's get started.
The video that you're about to watch is designed in 3 sections. In the first section, I'm going to be teaching a group of teachers how to mind map. Just imagine that you're part of that class. When the class stops to make a mind map, you'll turn off your video and create your own map. In order to do this, it's ideal if you have some colored pens, and I just use a variety of different colors of felt tip pens, and a sheet of paper, which is a little bit larger than what you normally write on. That would be about 11 by 17. That's a standard large copier sheet. The larger the better. If you want to use flip chart paper, that's fine too. So I suggest that you take your time, stop the video anytime you want, re-watch various sections. One of the nice advantages to learning on video is that you set the pace, you study and work when you want to. In the second section, you're going to see me teaching a group of primary school students. In the third section, I teach junior high students. This is going to give you 2 possibilities. One is that you watch me teach, and then you in turn teach your students, or you can bring the video to the classroom and show it directly to your students. Enjoy this process. It's really exciting to see what children can do with mind mapping. What we're really doing is saying to them, of course you like to draw pictures. It's natural for people to doodle. It's important to be able to see the relationships among ideas. Everyone's interested in making connections and coming up with new ideas, so here's a system that will enable you to do that. We're giving them permission to have fun, to play with ideas, and to be their most creative possible selves. Let's look at the left and right hemisphere of the cerebral cortex. I'm going to draw it as if we were looking down at the top of someone's head, at the 2 hemispheres of the cerebral cortex. And cortex, meaning bark, is that outer layer that's very deeply infolded. So there's a great deal occurring here among the neurons. And there's also a connection, the corpus callosum, connecting these 2. So there's always activity going on throughout the whole brain. As a matter of fact, I'll just draw an arrow from here to here to really emphasize nobody's functioning with just one side or the other unless they've had surgery. All other brains are functioning with both hemispheres. Over here is the left hemisphere. What do you associate with the left hemisphere? Any thoughts about, a lot of times it's hard to remember now which is the left and which is the right.
Left is analytical.
Left analytical? Good. And one thing that I find helpful for that is to say left linear. It just helps me remember the L. But left is also analytical. It's logical. Taking things in order, in sequence, dealing with mathematics. That would be primarily left hemisphere kind of behavior. Now, the left hemisphere, some people think of it as for language too, and it is for complex language, for entire sentences. So I'm going to put the word sentence here, not just language, because we need both hemispheres for language. Over here, the right hemisphere recognizes the sound and the shape of letters. So you need the right hemisphere for language too. But basically what we want to look at it is this is all very linear, logical. This left hemisphere does not have much emotion. You might think of Spock on Star Trek. Thank you, give me the facts. I don't care about the emotions. I'm looking for the information. And collecting little pieces of a puzzle. What an interesting little puzzle piece. What a nice little piece of data. Not really caring how it fits in or what the picture is, but just the little details. Likes it very much. Also, it just loves a little black and white. Don't need any color or anything. Just words will be just fine. Now, what do you think of when you think of the right hemisphere?
Creativity.
Creativity. I'm going to write that across here. It definitely has a lot to do with the right hemisphere. But creativity, the way I like to look at it is you generate ideas over here. You get new ideas or thoughts. You see the pattern. Here's an idea. You start to take the puzzle pieces and make patterns and pictures out of them. But all of this good creative thinking also requires your ability to do things, to move out into the world, to articulate your ideas, to go into a process. So you really need both to be fully creative. But over here, it's definitely you are imaginative, and that might be a word that would capture that, imagination. I'll just put imagine. We're way outside the bounds of the brain here even, because here the right hemisphere is connecting with your intuition, emotions, imagining things that haven't happened yet. Now, if we take the traditional student back to our classroom at Hannah-Walt Grade School, you've got a student who has a very nice, strong right hemisphere processing style going all the time. They don't feel so good about sitting in rows. So when the teacher isn't looking, they move their chair as slowly as they can over to a window, and they look out a window and they think, wow, if I could fly, I mean, not high, but maybe just if I really flap my arms, I bet I could get maybe 2 or 3 inches off the ground. It would be so cool. So they raise their hand to ask the teacher about that, and the teacher says, that's not what we're discussing right now. So those ideas are just kind of put away. And then the kid thinks, oh, that's all right. I'll just draw a little picture over here. I'll make a person flying. I guess I'd have to tape something to their arms, so their arms could be like wings, and they could fly. And all of a sudden, they're doodling on the edge of the paper. Can't have that either in these classrooms. Now, in today's classrooms, we understand and use a lot more of the arts and a lot more opportunities. But this is the system that most of us grew up with, and we tend to think along these lines, and often to limit ourselves when it's time to be creative. Well, Tony Buzan, from England, still in England, but having an impact on people in this country as well, took a look at the left and right hemisphere styles in the 1970s, and he thought, well, it's interesting. This left hemisphere looks a lot like a sheet of paper. When I was given paper in school and told to put my ideas on paper, it looked like that. It was all lined up for me before I even started putting my ideas down. Perhaps you'd like to look at another culture. Israel, not much difference. The Orient, oh, here we go. Lines. In all cultures where people are putting down their language, they're tending to use lines to do it for their more formal papers, their business papers, their school papers, everything in lines. That really kind of leaves this part uninterested. What we want to do is add color and symbols, because that's the language of the right hemisphere. We don't want to limit ourselves with lines already on the page, but instead start with a piece of paper that has no lines. And for mind mapping, you begin in the center of the page and branch out. Suppose I had a little drawing in the center of this page that represents my topic. I can branch out with words and images in any direction I want. And I keep branching out and adding ideas as long as the ideas occur to me. And a new idea goes wherever it fits with the existing ideas. Perhaps some new ideas over here, or an idea that fits here, or a brand new idea that has to come right from the center of the map again. Now, if you look at this configuration that I just drew, it reminds me of a neuron in the brain. It keeps branching out and making new connections. And if you just stop and think about, right now, if you try to let's try it. Close your eyes for a minute and try to be aware of all the different impulses that are going on right now in your brain. Of course, you can't think of all of them, but turn your attention to how you're feeling physically. You may have some thoughts about what's going to be happening in the next hour or this afternoon, some memories about earlier today. You're listening to my voice. and open your eyes again. There's a real rich tapestry going on in there. It's not one thought and then another. It's not point A, point B, point C. When you're trying to write a paper and you want to get all your ideas on paper, they just don't turn out in the order that they need to necessarily, because your mind is so radiant and has so many things occurring. Here we have an opportunity to say, yes, I'm thinking about all these different ideas. I have this idea and that idea. And if they're on the topic of the map, I can put them on the page wherever they fit. This follows my thinking process. It doesn't limit it or put it inside of lines. It allows it to flow. So that's one of the purposes for mind mapping.
And we've got next here, what do we got next here? Looks like we got a brain over here, so brain's up next here. So what do we hear for this brain? This brain here's got a neocortex in it. So what do we hear over there? We hear 1, we hear 2, 2, 2.5, 3, 3, 3.5, 4. Hey, do you know this right here's got a limbic system built right in? That's 5, 5.5, we got 5, okay? This right here's got the reptilian part of the brain. Do I hear any more for that? So 7, 10, 10, 15, 15, 20, 20, 20. One of my favorite uses for mind mapping solves a particularly thorny problem at schools. Something happens around those last few weeks of school where students are getting all squirrely and antsy, and it's hard to focus on the academic subject matters. And so teachers often find themselves dealing with a lot more discipline problems and a lot less learning going on. There is a nice solution to that. The solution is to create an enormous mural-sized mind map in the classroom. Here's how you do that. You may want to clear off an entire wall of the classroom. Let's say your wall is, 8 feet high by 25 feet long. Then what you do is just to cover the entire wall with butcher paper, so it's all stapled down or taped down or whatever. Then you can take your students and break them into teams, or if you want, pairs, cooperative groups, or whatever. You can have them do some brainstorming to figure out what particular topics from the whole year or the semester that you want to use for the review. Once they have that, they can figure out what sections and quadrants of the map that they're actually going to be working on. You may have some group work on the upper right and another group on the lower left and whatever. So pretty soon, the planning part just starts building the excitement and the interest. Then once your students get started on it, it's really exciting. I'll tell you why it's so exciting. So many students have this mindset called, what did we do all year? I don't remember anything. What did we learn? And when they start putting it down on paper, something magical happens. They start seeing all of these things they learned during the school year. So the mind map, or as it turns into this enormous mindscape, becomes this extraordinary visual, this artifact of everything that was done for the entire school year. Imagine your third graders working for a week or working for 2 weeks, and then adding symbols and pictures and arrows which show relationships and faces and so forth, all of these things to make it totally come alive. Once the students have completed that, there's a couple of interesting things you can do with that. How about this one? Get a Polaroid camera and have the students stand in front of it, or even teams that worked on it, so there's a lot of pride. You can have the students autograph their section of the mindscape that they did. Then take a picture and let the students take that home. Think about how much fun that would be to have just in a family album or as just some kind of a memory. Wouldn't it have been great for you as a third grader to have a record of everything you learned in third grade? So students could get a record of it if you took a picture of it. The second thing, how about if you have students go to other classes? One third grade class could go to another third grade class and find out what they learned during the entire school year. Or you could even have kids come in and add things to it. Or how about this one? What if you had your third graders who just finished their extraordinary mindscape that goes on 8 feet high by 25 feet long, 200 square feet of memories of the school year, right when they're ready to leave for that end of that school year, take them to the next year's, the fourth graders' mindscapes that they've put up on the wall and find out what will we be learning next year. And when the kids come in and they get a chance to preview all those coming attractions for the next year, it really starts building some excitement for them for the next year. So summer becomes even a time of anticipation for students. So there's all kinds of things you can do with mind maps, and one of my favorites is turn it into a giant wall-sized artifact or memory of what went on during the school year. Now that's graffiti we can all live with.